If you look closely, you might notice that behind me, there's actually a building. And if you're particularly perceptive, you might be able to glean the nature of that building. Which leaves the question, what is this big structure doing out here in the absolute middle of nowhere? Well, to answer that question, we don't need to look at this building, but we actually need to look at a lot kitty corner right across the street. Because these intersections used to be the most popular way for people to get to towns like Rockford, DeKalb, I think Rochelle somewhere near here. And prior to the building of I-58, it was a major intersection in Illinois. So behind me is an abandoned empty lot. But if you notice just past that lot, there's another abandoned structure that belongs to the U.S. government, so we're not going to go near that. And that was a former wait station where trucks mandatory had to stop. So what do you build next to a truck wait station? You build a motel and you build a truck stop. So this lot behind me actually used to hold a truck stop called Angel's Truck Stop and a small motel with about, I don't know, what would you say, like 8 rooms? 8 to 10 rooms. It was a limestone building, and while I personally never set foot on the property because that's trespassing and that's illegal, many people did, and we should be glad that they did because now that's all that remains of this structure. With this being a fairly busy intersection, with all the trucks having to stop, a place for them to stay, and a place for them to eat, what's the next step but entertainment? The building on this lot was only torn down in around 2023 or 2024. The exact date, I'm not sure of. But the building that sat on it was abandoned for a lot longer than that. I don't know the exact number, but I will say that there are multiple reports over the past 10, 20 years of squatters living in the building, which is one of the main reasons that I think a lot of people wanted to see this building demolished. Now, when the person who supplied me the footage that you're seeing right now went to this building, there was nobody currently squatting. And something that a lot of people comment on are all of the toys that are strung up around and all of the things that are here. Because usually when you see a lot of abandoned buildings like this that have been abandoned for a long time and that don't have any kind of safety measures, or even in a lot of cases for these rooms, don't have doors or windows or roofs, you don't see a lot of the objects left behind. On initial perception, I assumed that this was just done by people who are coming and checking out the abandoned building, by teenagers or something like that. But upon further research, turns out all of it was done by one squatter. His name is hard to find, to be honest. I've seen him referred to as Christo or Nick or Nicholas or another name. And so I'm just going to go with Christo. I know for sure that there have been multiple people who've been seen squatting at this property, but the direct times that they were squatting there and living there is unknown. But what is known is that Christo, or Nicholas, or Nick, but we're going to just call him Christo, is the one who is responsible for the large amounts of things that are scattered around the property, or were scattered around the property. He was referred to as a hoarder by pretty much all who knew him. From what I could see from a lot of people who stopped to take photographs of the building, is that a cop? No. A lot of people who stopped by the property to take photographs of it or recordings of videos and who were nice about it often reported talking to him that he was a really nice guy and not really knowing why he was out here, what his situation was. And now, that's not something that we can know. There were also a lot of people who took videos and pictures touting it as a psychotic man squatting who's ready to kill people. He's armed and dangerous with guns, misconstruing a lot of sentiment that people who are local to the area had about him and his role with this property. And those things, not cool. We don't know him, and that's kind of the end of the story. He did pass away in around 2017 or 2018 in the spring. I'm not exactly sure the situation, but I do know that he had a heart attack while moving something in the building. It was found shortly after. He is the last reported squatter known to have been living in the building before its eventual demolition in around 2023 or 2024. So, after being abandoned for so long, what did lead to this building being demolished? Well, the owner of the actual property, who I don't believe was local to this area at all, he actually passed away, and the property did not get passed on to anybody else in his will. So, as surplus land, it went to the state, and the state, having condemned the building a long time ago as not suitable for people, tore it down. And all of the things in it and everything completely raised flat to the ground. Looking behind me, you can barely see what this building used to be, let alone how large it was. Something about the building that was previously in this lot that we see a lot when you try and look it up online are people kind of speculating. Really, it's just one article that one guy wrote that was reposted like 17 local news forums for some reason. And it kind of just asks, where are all of these creepy toys coming from? Who's stringing up all these toys at this abandoned motel? And things like that. And they're kind of pushing this narrative that, this building is inherently creepy and spooky and we should be scared of it. When it comes to these topics of conversation and kind of discussing abandoned buildings and, how we feel about them, a lot of the issue I have with a lot of that content is that people view it as spooky. They view it as something where it's kind of like, oh, this would be great for horror. This would be great for, an episode of The Walking Dead. That's what I see a lot online in reference to these buildings in particular, is how good of settings they would make in some dilapidated condition. And there are dangers to abandoned buildings. We see with squatters, there are dangers in the physical buildings themselves. They're unstable. They're not meant for humans to live in. There's a reason they're abandoned. But there's nothing scary about the building itself. And there's something to say about having a structure to remind you of the past. A structure that makes you think about, why is this here? Why is this empty lot here? Because, eventually when everything's gone, no one's going to stop and look at this intersection at all. And I'm not saying that we should have left a building that had multiple people squatting in it, that was, dangerous and was causing traffic issues with people stopping and pulling over and being generally obnoxious towards the people who resided there. But it is important to have these video records. I am not condoning the activity at all, but it is nice to see that somebody went out of their way to capture this building, that so many people stopped here in the middle of nowhere on the side of the road to take a photo, take a video, to look and explore it and archive it for future generations. Because I think that's a lot of what drives people towards abandoned buildings, is this idea that we don't know when it's going to be gone, but it is going to be gone, or it is going to be changed in some way. And we can hope that these buildings are recovered and that this past of theirs is remembered, but most of the time they end up just like this. This building was built in 1936, and I could not find what its possible purpose was before its job as a confectionery right now. You might notice that I'm standing here and not over there. If I were standing over there, that would be trespassing. So somebody owns this building, and they've been working on it for an unknown amount of time. Speculatively, or at least according to them, they've spent over $100,000 in working to revitalize the building and get it back into working condition as a club, bar, and gambling den. Whether that's something that happens is hotly contested, because the property has been empty since around 2017 or 2018, much later than I thought, to be honest, because it's always kind of looked like this. So a lot of the information that I got about these two lots is all on a Facebook page called I Don't Remember, and I'm not going to put it in here because you're not supposed to share locations. Keep that in mind. And all of that was really helpful. It was the best way I found to get actual information, but the way that you had to do it was you had to look through 200 comments and compare which ones said the same things and which ones said completely different things. So that was a lot of fun, and that was the extent of my research. So if you are familiar with these two lots and you notice anything that's not quite correct, I tried my best. I want to point out that I found a lot of videos online of people who went to these locations, and they were really... I really want to show the clips, but that's an important note, is that my big issue when it comes to content around abandoned buildings is that it's kind of seen as a spectacle or something where people can be really obnoxious because you're not affecting people. You're affecting people. You're affecting legacies and history. There's something to say about the importance of cataloging buildings while they're still up. Nobody's going to care that there was a strip club here that closed down. Nobody's going to care that there was a motel over there. And so, well, we can go on and we can make it seem like it was creepy and it was haunted and add all of these things to it to make something seem more interesting in our minds. It's interesting enough to know that this is history. 100 years ago, there were completely different roads than the roads we have now. And all the reason that we know that they are there is because of random placards scattered across the state that say, this was a stop on this trail. This was an intersection of these trails. They don't follow our roads, and eventually in 100 more years, our roads won't follow the same lines that they do now. So, well, right now, this is a dilapidated intersection in the middle of the Midwest. In 100 years, it'll be nothing. And 100 years ago, this intersection was the only way to get across the state.